So I have to admit, Jessica, I never use the blurred background. I never usually use that, but I'm at my mother-in-law's house and her study. It's chaos in here.
I'm like, what's in the background?
Do you want to see? It's just,
Yeah, I do.
it's just mad. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fine, but there's just a lot. We've actually slightly crossed paths in the past, but never met in person. I attended your excellent crisis Zoom at the beginning of COVID.
Oh my God, yeah. God, that feels like a lifetime ago. That was completely that completely happened by accident as well. Because I think I put a tweet out being like, anybody want to chat about how they feel about the industry?
And we were all like, yes, we're terrified.
Yeah. And then it was really funny because I was so unprepared for it that I didn't administrate it properly. So people were DMing me with their emails. So I spent basically 6 hours just getting hundreds of people DMing me with their emails.
Oh, God. I obviously need to ask you the pivotal question in a moment of what is your favourite speech. But before that, you are such a prolific and interesting producer that everyone listening to this may not know of or know the gargantuan things that you have been responsible for. So can you give a very brief intro for the listener of what your journey has been?
I'll try and make it a brief précis of my journey. Big pivotal moment for me was when I was 17. I went to the Edinburgh Festival for the first time. I did my work experience there with a production company. And it's the first time I'd been away from home on my own without my friends, without my parents. And I just completely fell in love with it. And I was obsessed with theatre before then because I wanted to be an actor. But I was just exposed to a different way of making work and different varieties and genres and just that kind of very, for anyone who's been to the Edinburgh Festival, that kind of intoxicating sense of possibility and artistic license that the Fringe has. And so I started going to the Fringe every year from the age of 17, working in different guises basically. Alongside that, I basically went to do my degree in drama, went to drama school afterwards to train as an actor, left there, immediately didn't work as an actor, and basically had a friend ask me to help them on a project, and then a friend asked me to help them on another project, and I sort of found myself kind of in this sort of producing things, and that sort of culminated with me taking a show to the Edinburgh Fringe at the end of that summer of that year, with the support of somebody who was a bit older than me, who was an actor who was also trying to get into producing, who I'd met in my first year at the Fringe. So this is where the Fringe becomes very, very kind of pivotal for me in lots of ways. So I produced a show at the Edinburgh Fringe and I was like, oh my God, I'm a producer now. So what ensues is a sort of series of years of me independent producing, not really making any money, mostly producing shows on the Fringe. And I went to work for a production company called Look Left, Look Right as their assistant producer, and they were having a kind of real moment, and it was a real baptism of fire for me. And so I just learned much quicker because I was given a lot more responsibility than I probably should have been based on my experience.
What was the difference for you of when you say that was a baptism of fire? What was different being in that company from because by that point, like you say, you were a producer.
Yeah, basically Look Left, Look Right, at the time that I joined, they had made this show that had won a Fringe First called You Once Said Yes, and it was a kind of interactive walking tour around Edinburgh, an amazing show. And basically, suddenly that company was being commissioned by Lift Festival and by the Lowry. And so I just fell into this world of suddenly these much bigger partners. I think coupled with the fact that the artistic director basically got another job and so left me and the associate director to kind of run the company day to day for her, which was absolutely fine. So we just ended ended up doing way more, much quicker, and with, I guess, more resource and bigger partnerships than I perhaps would have had at that stage in my career normally.
Yeah.
That made me feel like I was properly a producer. And then that's the summer of after working or whilst working for Look Left, Look Right, I was called by a director called Vicky Jones, who had directed me in a final year show at drama school. And she said to me, me and my friend Phoebe have this company, Dry Right. We do these short play nights. And I was like, I know you do. And she said, we want to do a full length play. And we want a an assistant producer, originally is what she said. Subsequently, I became the producer. I suddenly was asked to be the producer of this show, and it was a play by Jack Thorne called My Did I, and we did it at the Soho Theatre. So that's how I became connected to Dry Wet, which is Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Vicky Jones's company. And then off the back of that, we took a show called Fleabag that we made together to the Fringe, and then obviously Fleabag is the one that everybody knows me for, you know, we produced that in 2013, which is 11 years ago now, which is crazy. So I sort of see that as the kind of like most important kind of moment in my career, really, in terms of just like being able to kind of travel in the same direction as the show.
Your sliding doors moment of like, if that show hadn't happened, I don't know what would have, but that show happened and the trajectory changed. Exactly.
I think if that show hadn't happened, I think I'd still be a producer and I'd probably still be doing lots of great things, but I think it opens lots of doors for you making a show like that. And it makes people answer your emails and, you know, pick up the phone to you in a way that you may have to just like do a little bit more fighting for otherwise.
Big time.
So I'm sort of acutely aware of like how valuable that was to me. And then after I produced Fleabag, I had a very brief stint working at Bill Kenwright. 6 weeks.
I didn't know that.
Well, I didn't do very much time there because I sort of, I wasn't ready to work in commercial theatre, I don't think. I wasn't really ready to do that kind of producing yet. But luckily for me, I really quickly got a job at Payne's Plough. Payne's Plough, who I mentioned before, new writing touring theatre company. That's kind of where I learned how to do things properly, learn how to develop my kind of dramaturgical skills, my programming skills. I left Payne's Plough to briefly work for a company called Curious Directive, who are a kind of devising company, as their exec producer. And I sort of went there to see whether I wanted to be independent and set up my own independent thing, or to work inside a kind of regularly funded arts council organisation. So it was kind of me going, am I going to work in the subsidised sector, or am I going to work in the commercial sector? And during that time, I set up FMP, my production company, and produced a couple of shows at the Edinburgh Festival whilst I was working there. And that was sort of like the turning moment for me. I was like, oh no, I actually do want to just be in control of my own thing. I think I learned that like you have to work so hard as a producer, like why not just work really hard for myself instead of someone else's company?
Absolutely. And also I guess it's knowing what shows are shows that you're passionate about as well. It's sort of like it is such a grueling job being a producer, and actually if you find yourself having to do all of that for a show that you don't care about, or you're not passionate about, or you're not, you don't believe in, that's just soul destroying. There's sort of a million questions I have just on the production side, which I think it's so interesting, but I'm going to try and put them to the side for a moment and come back to the main question of the podcast, and then I'm sure we'll come round full circle. But so Francesca, tell us what your favourite speech choice is.
Well, I thought about it quite hard, and I had some very funny ideas about what I could pick for this, because I think it's really hard, isn't it? Because the kind of breadth of possibility is sort of endless. But I landed on a speech from Love and Money by Dennis Kelly. And I think I chose this speech because Dennis Kelly is still my favourite playwright, and I think he's one of those playwrights who I fell in love with when I started to like learn about the way that theatre could be outside of the parameters of what I'd experienced when I was growing up. And it's not that I had like a super uncultured upbringing. I was really cultured, but it was sort of limited to like #1 touring shows at the Hexagon in Reading. And the speech is from this play Love and Money, and it's one of his early plays, but it's just a really amazing and clever play, very dark, which is what I love about his work, like his ability to find like this black humour and to like reel you in and then to like really stick the knife in. And it's played in reverse, episodically, the play. And the speech at the end, the character of Jess, who is the wife of this guy who starts the play, she's doing a speech sort of in the past. So we've ended up in the past about...
Because the whole thing, to clarify, is sort of the story of this couple's time together, isn't it? But like you say, in reverse.
It's kind of about how he killed her. Spoiler alert. But and their struggles with debt and money. But the speech is about her after he's proposed to her. It's about her like sense of feeling of possibility about life, and it's very philosophical. And when I was doing my degree, we did a production of it as well, and I played the part back in my former days as like in my being an actor. And so I think that's why I chose it, because it's kind of beautifully written, very witty, very very philosophical, full of like hope and purpose with like an edge to it.
Well, I guess, and the edge must surely also come from the dramatic irony of knowing at the point that the speech is done, knowing everything that comes afterwards.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so smart about the play. And I've always thought Dennis was just such an amazing writer.
Was it, you said you did it at university, was that your first experience with Dennis Kelly writing?
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
This play was the first time you'd read any Dennis Kelly?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I think I was just like really underexposed to like new plays, basically.
I think most people are. I mean, I feel like actually, even if you're a kid who's lucky enough to, privileged enough to be able to go to the theatre, it's Shakespeare and it's musicals. And like you said, it's, number one touring shows of repeat it, or it's the plays that they do in your GCSE, and that's it. And actually, to speak to the work that you produce, I'm always amazed by how little, even people who live in London, how little they are aware of the magical stuff going on in these rooms above a pub and tunnels, under watery, damp bridges and stuff. It's like there's so much incredible work going on that is not going to the West End.
Yes, 100%. I think that's really true, and I think I think now I think in a way what's been really good recently is that there have been those shows that have made that journey from Fringe to the West End. I'm not just talking about my shows, although some of those are my shows, but you think about like a musical like Operation Mincemeat, which started its life on the Fringe and then just won Best New Musical at the Olivier's. And so
I completely agree. I think there's almost a generation of that now. Like I put in the same bracket as that. I was just talking about this to someone else, and Operation Mincemeat, like Six the musical, The Play That Goes Wrong. Yes, there seems to be this world now of like, oh, okay, things can start small and just go stratospheric. Did you ever get to produce Dennis Kelly then? Have you ever, when you were at Payne's Plough, was there any Dennis Kelly going on?
Oh, yes, I definitely produced some Dennis Kelly at Payne's Plough. It was like, I was so starstruck when I met him. And actually, I don't mind telling you that I really thought about using that play that I produced when I was at Payne's Plough for the speech, but really only because it made me laugh so much, the idea of using that speech. The play that I produced that was Dennis Kelly's play when we were at Payne's Plough was a play called Our Teacher's a Troll, which is a kids show. And but in true Dennis Kelly style, it is so enjoyable for adults and so dark in so many ways for a kids show. And it's basically about a brother and a sister who go to school one day and their head teacher is a troll, and they go back to tell their mum and she doesn't believe them. And the speech, basically the troll only says ack, and there's this whole speech where the troll just goes ack, ack, ack for literally 3 minutes. And I was like, maybe I'll use that speech. I'm not sure what Lucy will think of that, but I was finding it very funny thinking about using it. Yeah.
We'll consider this like a dual episode, the act speech and Love and Money.
Exactly.
I think I'd have found it harder to ask you questions like, is there a line you particularly like in the act speech, To that point, is there any part of the Love and Money speech that particularly that you remember as like being particularly touching or moving, or something being written in a particular way? Or is it more like, is the effect of Dennis Kelly the sort of the larger picture?
I'm sure there is a line, but I can't think what it is. I mean, I think just I think the thing that I always really loved about the speech was the way it was written, you know, almost how it's written and structured in a way that tells you how to say it, and how she's pausing and thinking.
And because
so like
our listener won't be able to see that, can you describe what that is then? So is it like, I've seen it, but it's line breaks, it's...
Line breaks. Yeah, it's line breaks. So sometimes you might have 3 words on one line, and then it might break, and then it might be like a full sentence, and then it might go to one word on another line, and then... And I think that I'm absolutely not an actor, and it's a muscle that I've not exercised for a long time, but I remember that being quite a compelling... read and perform, like, and made a difference to how you performed it as well. And I think even as a reader, when you read that, it gives you a sense of rhythm. Yeah.
I guess it takes away, it removes. I was debating this then. It removes the ability for one actor to try and put their stamp on it, but I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if Dennis wrote it to be said a certain way. I think maybe, again, this is me thinking about Shakespeare, we become very obsessed, or actors become very obsessed about like how they can do their version of something. And actually, I guess the best version of anything is to just do the truest version of how it was meant to be performed. You know, and with certain plays, if a monologue, for instance, is written in that way, you're like, don't fight against that rhythm. Like, that is the rhythm that the writer wanted. And if that means you're saying it in a similar way, you know, it's interesting. It removes ambiguity from it.
It definitely removes ambiguity from it. I think when you read it, as a reader, I think it's very helpful because it gives some texture to the reading, I think.
Yeah. How much do you, as a producer, you know, you've, like you say, to use the really obvious examples, you were responsible for Fleabag, you've been responsible for the stage show of Baby Reindeer, you've done so many of these Edinburgh Fringe shows with new writing. To what extent do you as a producer find yourself involved in redrafts, script edits, that sort of stuff?
Oh, super involved. Yeah, super involved. I think different producers work differently and have different skill sets, but one of my skill sets is development. What I don't do is I don't give like really intense extended notes. I'm all about kind of like feelings and instincts and enthusiasm and encouragement in my kind of like development style generally. I think also because we've established a bit of a brand for the company, FMP, and so much of the work is bound up in, you know, my own personal taste, and so it would feel strange if I didn't have that kind of relationship to the development.
I'm aware I'm clock watching. I know that you have to get off to rehearsals. So there's a couple of final things I wanted to ask about before we hear the speech. One thing, just to go back to the Edinburgh Fringe, because you have such a unique relationship with that festival, amazing festival. I was recently in a conversation with someone where they were talking about, partly because I was considering doing something at Edinburgh Fringe, producing something with my company again. And this person was sort of going, you have to understand there's 2 Edinburgh Fringes, you know, and because I was sort of going, it feels like it might be the right place to go with this play, but on the other hand, in a weird way, it feels like a step back for me because I produced at the Edinburgh Fringe when I was 21, you know. And this person was sort of going, well, you have to understand there's 2 Edinburgh Fringes. There is, and they're both incredible, but there's the Edinburgh Fringe, which is like young people starting out, figuring out how it's done, experimenting, all of that. And then there is an Edinburgh Fringe that is like, to your point about Operation Mincemeat and the new diorama, you know, it's sort of it's an Edinburgh Fringe that is a strategic move for very established producers who just think that those venues are the right place to start that show. You know, you've got such a captive audience at the Edinburgh Fringe, you know, and all that sort of stuff. Do you feel like you can, because it feels like you've had such a unique relationship with that festival throughout your career, do you feel like you can tell the moment when you went from... Like, was there an Edinburgh Fringe when you were like, I'm a different kind of producer now?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. It was a bit seamless. I think it was helped along by the fact that when I worked at Payne's Plough, much to my pleasure, we started taking Roundabout, the pop-up touring auditorium that was built by James Grieve and George Perrin under their time as artistic directors there. We started taking it to the Edinburgh Fringe and programming it as a venue. So there was a sort of shift for me there generally, because I was, I was a salaried, I was on a salary in an Arts Council MPO. And so that felt a bit different.
Yeah.
I think probably where it really felt different was the first year that I produced officially under FMP's banner, which was in 2018, when I produced a play called Angry Allen by Penny Skinner, and then a play called Square Go by Kieran Hurley and Gary McNair, and that was in Roundabout. And they both did really well, sold out, won Fringe First. And I was like, oh, right, okay, this is the thing now. And
you weren't staying up all night, maybe, also?
Yeah, I think that too. Like, the older I've got, the more responsible I have to be, and the less capacity I have for the 3 a.m.ers, basically.
Yeah.
I think probably since sort of 2018, 2019, where it stopped being so scrappy and started being like everyone had their own beds in a flat. That's when it felt real.
I think that's what would be the real culture shock for me. Like, if that is what my company decide to do, I'm going to be like, I don't understand. Like, I have my own bedroom. That's mad. A final question. Again, because you have been responsible for this work that has started so small and gone stratospheric in terms of TV. I was about to say in film, but TV it really is, isn't it? And again, I'm obviously specifically here thinking about Fleabag and Baby Reindeer. What relationship do you continue to have with these shows that you obviously almost like mothered, when they actually go off into a realm that is not your production world?
Thing. Yeah. Yes, my production world.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question. I think the truth is our relationship is limited, but that is changing because we have such a good track record basically of doing it, and the development of our company is very much into a space of being, I've sometimes say content creator, but I hate that because that sounds incredibly corporate. What I really mean is a home for storytelling. So I think the ultimate goal for FMP is that it becomes a place where people can bring their stories to, and they can be told in any medium,
yes,
TV, film, podcast, theatre, whilst acknowledging that we're kind of native to the theatre element. So, I mean, fortunately for me, with Fleabag and Baby Reindeer, they've been made by very dear friends, and I've had a kind of emotional relationship to them, and I've not been cut out in that way at all. And I'm very happy for them to be having so much success. So yeah, that's our relationship to those particular shows, but with a, without saying exactly what's going on behind the scenes, like there is a thing going on and behind the scenes at the moment that means that we will be much more involved moving forward.
It feels like you'd be foolish not to, now that it's so clear that like you have this track record of producing such wonderful story, with your writers and with your creators and with your team, but producing stories that clearly have the potential to go into different mediums and go sort of beyond the small audiences that we can get in those great little venues.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I think you're going to have to read me the speech, Jessica, because
oh my God,
you have rehearsal to go to. We didn't even properly talk about Kathy and Stella, but everyone should go and see Kathy and Stella.
It's okay. It's fine. I'll read the speech and then I can do a little bit on Kathy and Stella. And then
yes, perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm just reading this. I'm just reading the speech. Is that what you want me to do?
That's totally fine. That's all we want. We just want to hear the words.
Oh my God. Apologies in advance for the terrible performance. I have discovered that language is completely useless, and that we only bother with it because we haven't got any telepathy, and that there is no language that can express this stuff is just pouring out of me, that can express how I feel about him, which is why I have to fuck him, because it's the closest I can get to telling him how I feel about him. And I look up and he's crying, and he's not the sort of man that cries. And he tells me that I'd better marry him then. And I say yes, and I know he feels the same. I know. So maybe this is why I believe there is something more, because I have evidence of it. I live in it. I'm not saying I don't want things though. I do want things. I want things for us. I've begun to look at my life and say, well, it has been a little bit scruffy. And now I don't want that. I want to be a bit neater. I want it to be a bit like it's supposed to be. I want it to be a bit like, I know what a cunt. Right now, maybe right now I'm feeling that there has to be something, because I feel blessed. And I know that sounds stupid, but I feel so blessed and lucky and grateful and looking forward. I'm just so looking forward. That's it. That's everything I wanted to, that's it. The end.
The end. That is so good, isn't it? Like the repetition of like blessed and lucky and grateful that I'm looking forward. I'm just so looking forward at the end of this entirely reverse play. Like that is just heartbreak, and you know how it's going to end. Oh my God. Very well done, Dennis. Well done, Dennis. Well done. I have to say, no one had chosen Dennis Kelly until this series, and then I've had 2 Dennis Kellys. I had Corey Milcrease talking about the ritual slaughter of George Mastromas.
George Mastromas. I remember seeing that at the Royal Court. Loved it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, so you have to get on your bike and get to rehearsals. So tell us, why are you going off to rehearsals? It's for Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder. What is Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder?
Okay, Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder is a true crime murder mystery comedy musical. Started its life at the Fringe in true FMP style, and has grown from a tiny little show with 5 people in it to a huge West End production with 10 people in the cast and 4 people in the band. It's a brilliant story about 2 girls from Hull who have a true crime podcast, and their favourite true crime author comes to town. She gets murdered in the style of the Hull Decapitator, who's an infamous serial killer from Hull, made up for the purposes of the musical. And then they go on a quest to solve her murder, make a success of their true crime podcast, and kind of solve the mystery of the Hull Decapitator. But really, it's a story about friendship. That's what it's about. It's about 2 people who find a sense of purpose in each other and in their passion for true crime. And it's really funny. It's a laugh a minute, and it is just my favourite thing I think I've ever produced. And the songs are so brilliant, and they will genuinely be living in your head rent-free when you come and see it. You'll never be able to get them out after that. But you can listen to 4 of them on an EP if you want before that on Spotify.
Amazing. Right.
Yeah.
Go to your show.
I'm off. Thank you.